Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Catherine Kaplan. I am with SEB Housing, and this is the information session for the 19 affordable rental units at Radio Factory Lofts in Melrose, Massachusetts. The purpose of this session is to give a little bit of background information on the affordable units. We're also going to discuss the application, eligibility, and lottery processes, and what to expect after the lottery. So if you have any questions during this Zoom session, you're encouraged to either type them into the chat or you were muted as you entered this meeting. So you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question. And then just to minimize any noise, go ahead and mute yourself again once you have finished speaking. We also have a conference call that is running concurrently during this session, so it's not through Zoom, but if you would like to join by phone, I'm going to put the information in the chat right now. That's the number and the ID code that you will need. And this session is also being recorded. You should have received that notification when you entered the room, and it will be available on SEB Housing's YouTube channel after tonight. And so if you have any questions during the session tonight, after the session tonight, you can connect with us by emailing us at info@sebhousing.com, or you can give us a call at the number that's on your screen there, the 617-782 number, if you have any questions following the session while you're filling out your application. Just before I dive into it all, if you guys have any questions right now, let me know. Any trouble viewing the screen, hearing me, anything like that. All right, good. So just a little bit of background on who SEB Housing is. We are an off-site affordable housing consulting group. We're not the on-site management team at Radio Factory. We're not at the building. We've been hired by the management team to market the affordable units, conduct this information session, collect and review applications, and determine applicants' eligibility for the affordable housing program, and then to ultimately run the lottery. So in the initial phases, we are your main point of contact rather than the management office or the leasing office. But then further along in the process, you will be in touch with the management team directly, who will know a lot more about these units and who will be on site at Radio Factory. So the first step in the process is to apply for the affordable housing program. And that's when you'll be in touch with SEB Housing. We can answer any questions you have on the affordable housing program, your application, and you can let us know if you have any questions about the lottery. We'll run the lottery. After the lottery, you may be in touch with the leasing office for lease eligibility if you're one of the top households on the wait list, which we'll talk a lot more about tonight. Your lease eligibility will include a lot of the typical checks that you might be familiar with that property managers are usually looking to do. So on any tenant, we'll have a credit, rental history check, criminal background check if applicable. And then step 3, once you've been approved by the management or leasing office and you've been found lease eligible, you'll then be directed back to SEB Housing. And at that point, we're going to ask you to provide supporting documentation, such as your income, asset, and tax information that is listed on the lottery application. So you'll have about a week to gather all of that information following the lottery if you are one of the top households. So in order to apply for this, we have the application for Radio Factory Lofts on our website, so sebhousing.com. You will find that there. And there's also a downloadable version of the information packet. In order to find that on our website, you're going to want to navigate over to sebhousing.com, click on the Affordable Housing's Opportunities page, and then select I want to rent, since this is a rental opportunity. And then once you select Radio Factory Lofts, you'll be taken to a page specific to this property that's going to have those downloadable versions of these of the application and the information packet. The information packet itself contains most of the material I'm going to be covering tonight. We're not going to have time to cover everything during the session. So even if you attend this information session, we do recommend that you take a look at the information packet because it's going to have a lot of useful information for you about Radio Factory. So if you choose to apply for one of the affordable units, you're first going to need to complete that lottery application. And you could submit it to us in one of several ways. By email, by sending it to info@stbhousing.com. You can send it to us by fax. The fax number is listed on the first page of the application. You can send it by regular mail, and our address is on the application as well, or you can drop it off at our office. We have a 24-hour drop box at our office in Needham if you're in the area, and the address is 257 Hillside Ave. Whichever one of those options is easiest for you, go ahead and do that. We do encourage you to get the lottery application in pretty early. It's fairly brief, and it should really only take you about 10 minutes to complete, since at this point, there's no need to submit supporting income, asset, or tax documentation in these early stages. Following the lottery, all of that information will be required. So lottery applications are due by August 16th, and your application would need to be postmarked or delivered by that date in order to be considered. You do not need to be a resident of Melrose in order to apply for this lottery, but there are several units, several affordable units, which have a local preference for residents of Melrose. We'll discuss a little bit more about that in a few minutes as well. Any questions before I go on?
If so, basically, if you're a Melrose resident, you're more likely to get picked than somebody who isn't. Is that correct, or no?
Pretty much. You're not more likely to get picked, but you will have priority. There's different priorities for each of the wait lists. So for each of the units that have local preference, there is different tiers of priority, and you would have a higher tier than a family who has the same bedroom size needs that is not a Melrose resident.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Can you apply for two household sizes at the same time?
For 2 unit sizes, yes. Yep.
Okay.
If you're interested in both a studio and a 1 bedroom, for example, yes, or a 1 or a 2, yes. Yep.
Okay.
All right. So just a little bit of background on the actual units themselves. So there is a website that Radio Factory Lofts has, so radiofactorylofts.com. You can go ahead and check that out for more information on amenities and some photos and things like that. But Radio Factory Lofts is a brand new development. It's located at 99 Washington Street in Melrose, and it's an adaptive reuse of a historic former mill. And it's going to contain 141 apartment homes, and there are studio, 1 bedroom, and 2 bedroom layouts. There's 19 affordable apartments within Radio Factory Lofts that are going to be rented to households with household incomes at or below 80% of the area median income. And that's happening through this application process. The units themselves feature modern finishes, including stainless steel appliances, kitchen islands. There's a lot of community amenities as well. There's a large fitness center, work from home spaces, game, movie, and conference rooms. There's a lot of outdoor amenities as well, including a grilling and dining deck, a fire pit, a dog wash, and a dog park. They also have electric vehicle parking and charging, bike sharing and bike storage, and it has a transit-friendly location since it's situated about a half mile from the Oak Grove T-stop, which is on the Orange Line, and it's located under a mile from the commuter rail stop, the Haverhill Line, and the stop is Wyoming Hill. So the affordable units are being offered as studio 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. There's 2 studio affordable units, and they contain 492 square feet and will rent for $1,701. There's 10 1 bedroom units. 2 of those 1 bedroom units are disabled accessible, and they have 636 square feet and will rent for $18.95. There's 7 2-bedroom units, and 2 of those again are disabled accessible, and they contain 952 square feet. And the 2-bedroom units will rent for $2,067. So the affordable rent is not set in accordance with an applicant's income or financial circumstances. So the rent is set. It doesn't change if your income changes. This is a subsidized housing opportunity, but if you do have a housing subsidy, you're welcome to check with your voucher administrator to confirm whether or not these rents will work for your particular mobile voucher. So for this housing program, the rents are set using a formula based on HUD's, which is the Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's set for the area median income for Boston, Cambridge, and Quincy. That's where Melrose falls. The rent may increase once per year, and it typically occurs around the time where HUD is revising their area median incomes each spring. There would always be advance notice if there was a rent change, and rents would never change in the middle of a lease term. And usually if there is an increase, it's pretty modest, between $25 to $75. And so since it's possible that there's going to be more interested applicants than there are available affordable units, the apartments are going to be made available through this lottery process, and only to households whose household income does not exceed 80% of the area median income for Boston. I'm going to touch on what those income limits are in just a few minutes, and they're also in the information packet. So I'll move on to the eligibility criteria unless there are any questions.
I had a question. Of these, of the 19 units available, has Radio Factory said when they will be finished? Because I know they're still under construction.
I do not have that information right now, but I will check with them. So I don't know if they're available for tours right now or when the first leases will be signed, or I should say tenants will be moving in. I do not expect there to be much of a delay between when the lottery is held, which is next month, and when you'd be able to move in though.
Okay, and have a lot of people applied? Are we allowed to ask that?
I think there has been a decent amount of interest. I don't have the number for you off the top of my head, but yeah, we have received quite a few applications when compared to other properties that we are working with right now.
Thank you.
Sure.
And we would be paying the amount that showed on the screen. Is that right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
So that those amounts are less than what the market rate units in the building are going for. I don't have those numbers for comparison, but it's significantly lower because these are the affordable rents.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Say you don't get picked for the lottery, you still are able to be on the waiting list, correct?
That's right. Yep. Yes, everyone will be on the waiting list, and we'll talk more about the lottery itself in a few minutes, but the gist of it is everyone is chosen in the lottery, and the lottery is held basically for SEB to be able to populate the waiting list and know the order of the waiting list. So if you're 5th on the waiting list, you potentially would just you'd have the 5th chance to select a unit and go through this process. A lot of times, there's applicants who either don't qualify for a lease after they've been entered into the lottery, or they maybe just decide during the process that they're no longer interested in the opportunity. So a lot of things can happen, and even if you're not 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or even 5th on the waiting list, you may be able to move forward. So we'll talk more about that.
What do you do if you need more than one parking space?
That would probably be a question for the leasing office. I'm going to write this down, but I don't have an answer to that right now.
Okay.
You may be able to rent one. I don't know what their situation is, though, off the top of my head, in terms of space availability. They may not have a lot of access spaces.
Okay.
but one space is, as you can see on your screen here, it is included in the affordable rent, one parking space per unit.
Right, okay, thank you.
Sure. All right, so to move on to the eligibility requirements, there's 4 eligibility requirements that are listed on page 4 of the information packet. The first is the income and assets of the household must be at or below that 80% of area median income that I mentioned. The second item to keep in mind for eligibility purposes is that household priority will be given based on your household composition. So if you are a 1-person household or a couple that shares a bedroom, you're considered a type 1 household. You're going to indicate on your lottery application which type you fall under, and there's an explanation on the different types there for you to look through and to reference. You may, as a type 1 household, you may apply for an affordable 2-bedroom unit, but you just want to keep in mind that all type 2 households will be placed ahead of you on the 2-bedroom waiting list. And some examples of a type 2 household are all households with 3 or 4 people, as well as some 2-person households. More information about unit types is on page 7 of the info packet too. So the thinking here is that the program wants to be able to serve households that actually need the larger bedroom size, rather than having a 1-person rent a 2-bedroom unit that may not actually need that extra space. The third is you as an applicant would not be able to own a home upon move-in. So if you own a home right now, that doesn't mean you can't apply for a affordable unit at Radio Factory Lofts. You would just need to sell the home before leasing the unit. So during the eligibility process, you can own a home, but once you sign the lease, it would need to be sold and you would need to be off of the deed prior to signing a lease. And the fourth, this doesn't come up often, but you can't have financial interest in the development and can't be considered a related party. So Oak Grove Mill Owner LLC is the management entity that is offering these affordable units. And if you work for them, you may not be eligible for this lottery. I just saw a chat question here. And I will answer, it's a direct message to me, so I'm going to answer that privately at the end. Okay, so to circle back on the income limits. So the income limits are listed here on your screen. Since these are affordable units, they're only being made available to households who have incomes at or below the 80%. And the units at Radio Factory Lofts the affordable units there are being made available to rent at prices that are lower than identical or very similar market rate units within the building. The maximum income limits, again, are set by household size. So if you're thinking about your own household income, you want to make sure that you are including income for everyone in your household, everyone who will be listed on the lease and will be living in the unit. And again, these numbers are listed on the application itself, in the information packet on our website. So you don't need to write them down or anything. Just know that this is what they are for Radio Factory, sorry. So a household size of 1, the maximum income limit is $78,300. For a household size of 2, the maximum income limit is $89,500. If you have 3 people, the maximum income limit is $100,700. And if you have a household size of 4 people, the maximum income is $111,850. And a reminder that at this stage, we do not need verification of your income in order to apply for the lottery. It was later on in the process that you would need to confirm for us with certain documentation that your household falls under these amounts. You, as an applicant, if you are eligible for the lottery, you're going to be provided with a document requirements guide, which is going to be helpful for you because it's going to spell out precisely what documentations you will need to gather in order to move forward and for us to be able to confirm whether or not you're eligible for the affordable housing program. So take a look at that guide, and it's going to detail exactly what types of things you need to submit, such as how many pay stubs and how many bank statements, things like that. You want to keep in mind that all households are going to be required to submit copies of your federal tax returns from the last year. And although we do not collect your income information up front, I do still want to give a basic overview of how your income will be calculated when we're determining your eligibility. So income for this program is counted as a projection of your income over the next 12 months for all household members. So that's all income for members, including bonuses, overtime, any type of income coming in. The only exception to this, two exceptions. The first one is wages earned by minors. So if you have someone in your household that's under the age of 18 and they're earning a wage, we're not going to count their wage income towards your total household income. The second is a dependent full-time student. If that person is working, we're only going to count the first $480 of their wages when determining eligibility. We also are required to count gross income, so not your net income that you take home, but your income before taxes. So although you don't take home a full salary, we do have to count the gross income according to the program. How we calculate the income is not one size fits all, since everyone's circumstances are unique. Some applicants have a weekly salary that is very consistent throughout the year, and others are self-employed or working seasonally. So in those types of circumstances, we may need to look further back in the past in order to project your anticipated income for the next 12 months. And then specifically for self-employed applicants, you'll need to complete a profit and loss statement and provide supporting documentation for your business. Your business expenses will be taken into account, but for households who are not self-employed, it will always be gross income that we need to count. And in general, any income that you have been making, we're going to assume that you will continue to be making going forward, unless we have some sort of definitive documentation stating that you'll no longer be earning the income source. An example could be a written letter from your employer that bonuses and overtime will not be allowed in the coming year, that sort of thing. We're not permitted to accept statements from applicants themselves. So an example would be if we're looking at all of your documentation and it's showing that you've made $80,000 in the last year, but we're being told that you plan to work far less hours going forward and you're only going to be making $50,000 in the coming year, we'd still need to count the $80,000 that we have on record unless we have some sort of a written statement or some sort of official documentation that we would need to consider. And so on the application itself, there's lots of different income sources listed, but just to list a few of them so you have them at the front of your mind. Any wage income you would need to document, including self-employment or wages from an employer, Social Security, SSDI benefits, child support, alimony, retirement distributions, unemployment compensation or workman's compensation, a pension, even periodic payments from friends or family. And we might ask for verification, such as a written statement from the family member confirming the amount and frequency of those payments. And then any assets that generate income, we will have to count that generated income towards your total household income as well. Just a couple more things here before I move on. So there is no minimum income for the affordable housing program. However, most management teams, including the team at Radio Factory Lofts, want to be sure that all tenants can afford the rent, regardless of whether or not the unit that they'll be renting is market rate or affordable. So the management company has set a minimum household income equivalent to 2.5 times the monthly rent. And those amounts are listed in the information packet, but if you're looking to rent a studio apartment, the approximate minimum household income is $51,030. For a 1-bedroom, your household would need to make $56,860. And to rent a 2-bedroom, your household would need to make approximately or at least $62,010. Anybody who has a mobile housing voucher can disregard the amounts that I just listed because they don't apply. But if you do have a housing voucher, you want to check in with the agency that issues your voucher to confirm that the rents are within the agency's payment standards or maximum rent. The leasing office at Radio Factory would eventually be reaching out to your housing agency to confirm that the rents are permissible, but it's best for you to know sooner rather than later, so you're not disappointed in the end if the rents do not work. Applicants without a voucher will need to have a household income between the minimum income floor that I just mentioned and the maximum income limits that were listed earlier. The only exception to this is households with incomes just below those minimum income floors. If a household is pretty close, household income is pretty close to the minimum income amount, but maybe you have liquid assets that you may be able to access in order to afford the rent, your application may be considered by the leasing office. So the minimum income amounts are not as strictly enforced as the maximum income limits that are a program requirement. So ultimately, it's going to be the decision of the leasing team during your lease screening as to whether or not your household meets the minimum income requirement. So keep all that in mind. There is no asset limit for affordable rental opportunities. So you could have significant assets and still apply and be qualified for an affordable rental unit here at Radio Factory. You could be retired, for example, and have a large 401k that's sitting there. So just wanted to put that out there. Although there is no asset limit, we are going to still need to collect asset information. And that's because income generated from your asset needs to be counted towards your total household income when we determine your eligibility. And so when you're gathering your asset information, you need to be thinking about these types of assets, checking savings accounts, bank statements, CDs, retirement accounts. We would need to count the net cash value of 401ks, IRAs, that sort of thing. We also would need to also see statements for Venmo, PayPal, not really the traditional assets that you're thinking about, but it is considered an asset on the program. Stocks, bonds. We will not need documentation for personal assets such as cars and things like that. All right, so we've covered a lot of eligibility criteria for the program, a little bit about the lottery. So just a reminder, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in or unmute yourself, and we'll talk about lottery eligibility in just a second here. All right, so the lottery itself. Oh, I see a question came in. So are any utilities included in the rent? And the answer is no. Utilities are not included. So it is electric, heat, hot water, cooking, and a water sewer charge as well. The parking space is included, but not utilities. All right, so the lottery eligibility. So as I mentioned earlier, you should go ahead and apply early if you think you're interested in this opportunity, just to get the process started. And we covered this earlier because someone had asked the question, but we do want to mention that you can apply for more than one unit size. So if you think you might be interested in a studio and a 1-bedroom, for example, you should indicate that on your application. There's really no downside to doing so, but there's a potential downside if you only apply for one unit and then you later decide that you might be interested in another apartment size. And the downside is that the wait list may already be quite long at that point. You would be, you may be out of luck at that point. So apply for any any number of units that you are interested in. We're going to review your lottery application once it comes into us, and we'll contact you with any information, with any missing information, or if anything appears to be incorrect, we will let you know, and you can go ahead and have the chance to correct it and resubmit it. If you're found eligible for the lottery, you're going to be sent a lottery application number in the form of a series of numbers. And this is the number that will be drawn in the lottery. It's not a ranking of any sort at this point. It's just meant to be an anonymous identifier, so your full name isn't called during the lottery. So if you were the very first person to submit your application and be found eligible, your number will be A.001. The letter is also going to confirm whether your household qualifies for local preference. So you will have indicated on your application whether or not you believe your household qualifies for this preference, and the necessary verification would have been submitted along with your application. So local preference might apply to you if you live in the city of Melrose, you work for the city, or you work for a business that's located within Melrose, or if you're a guardian or you have a child in your household that's attending Melrose Public Schools. So up to 70% of the affordable units at Radio Factory Lofts are going to have that local preference, which means that some local preference households will get priority for those units when compared to households who don't have local preference. And there's a lot more information about local preference on page 17, the end of the information packet. This letter or email is also going to confirm the bedroom size that you applied for, as well as if you indicated your household needs a disabled accessible unit. Applicants who are in need of a disabled accessible unit will have priority for those units over households who don't require the features of the unit. So that's going to be a separate wait list. And finally, the documentation requirements guide will be provided to you as an attachment to the email that I'm talking about right now. So once you're found eligible for the lottery, you'll be given all of this information in the form of an email. If you don't have an email address, we'll send it to you by regular mail. Documentation requirements guide will be provided as an attachment, and the guide, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, details all of the items that will need to be submitted prior to SEB's final approval of your application. So we suggest that you review this guide so you're aware of the documents that are going to be required if you're selected to move forward with reserving a unit following the lottery. If at any point during this process you're found ineligible for the lottery, you might be over income, for example, or own a home, you're going to be informed, and we would encourage you to contact us with any questions. And so we talked about household type a little bit on your application. You will have indicated whether or not you're a type 1 or type 2 household. And type 1 households can apply for a 2-bedroom unit, but type 2 households will have priority over any type 1 households who are applying for a type 2-bedroom unit. So this basically means when we're going down the wait list here, all type 2 households would be ahead of type 1 households when we're establishing those wait lists. The lottery itself is going to be held on August 24th, and it will be in the same format as this information session. The numbers will be drawn from a box, held up to the screen and recorded, and every lottery number will be drawn and picked. So when we think of lotteries, we sometimes think there's one winner, but the purpose of this lottery is to try to establish an order for the wait list. So in general, it is beneficial if your number is called early in the lottery. It may not necessarily be the deciding factor on whether or not you're going to be moving forward in the process, though, because we do still need to sort the results by priorities afterwards. So if a type 1 household is drawn first in the lottery, they're still going to be behind all of the type 2 households on the 2-bedroom waiting list, and so on. Also, any households who were entered into the lottery may or may not be found eligible by the leasing office. and they may decide not to rent the unit. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, if your number is drawn later on in the lottery, you shouldn't assume that you won't be able to move forward and reserve one of the units at Radio Factory Lofts, because you still may have that opportunity. It just depends on what happens with all of the households ahead of you on that waiting list. And so following the lottery, the evening of that lottery, we're going to populate the waiting list. We're going to be taking local preference, whether or not your household requires a disabled accessible unit into consideration, and we're going to do our best to send the waiting list to all applicants as soon as possible. Usually we're able to do this no later than the morning following the lottery. And they'll be sent by email to you, so you get those right away, and you'll have a better understanding of where you fall on the waiting list and if you'll be moving forward at that time. So you might not know in the moment if you're attending the lottery, but you'll know soon afterwards whether or not you're going to be moving forward, and we'll be put in touch with the leasing office. So when reviewing that email, you'll be looking for your lottery application number, the A.001, for example, and that's how you'll be able to see where you fall. The next step in the process. Oh, you have a question?
Yeah, because I read the packet and there was one little part that confused me a little bit. So like I submitted my application, I read everything required, and I noticed that like it said something in the packet, information packet, like a type 2, for example. I'm a type 2, it's me and my baby. Mm-hmm. But a person with a 4-bedroom household, 3-bedroom household, 2-bedroom, 2 head of household, and then it would be me, would be 1 head of household and 1 dependent. Does that mean that those 3 that I just named above are priority over me? Or because I'm type 2, it can just fall under depending on when the number's pulled?
Right, I see what you're saying. So it would be all type 2 households would have the same priority. So I see. You'd have priority over a single person, but you would have, yeah.
Okay, because the way it's listed, for a second, I was like, oh, wow, if they pull a bunch of names with 4 people, they get priority with me because it's just me and my dependent. So that's not necessarily true.
Right. Since you're considered a type 2, it wouldn't matter how many people are actually in your household because you have the same height as the other. Right.
All right, awesome. Yep. Thank you so much.
No problem. All right, so following the lottery, we're going to connect you, if you're one of the top households, with the management team, the leasing office, and your contact information will be provided to them. And you'll also be given their contact information. So the next step, which is applying for the lease and lease eligibility, can begin. You're going to have about 5 days to connect with the management team in order to initiate that lease screening process. And so just a reminder again, SEB Housing is screening for lottery eligibility, whether or not your household is even eligible for the lottery. And then we're going to screen your family for the Affordable Housing Program eligibility, but we're not going to be screening for lease eligibility, which is what the management company will be doing when they're screening things like credit, rental history, references, criminal background, things like that, to determine whether or not your household is eligible to rent with them. And you want to be aware that the leasing office might invite more households to complete the lease screening than there are available units. So for example, at Radio Factory Lofts, there are 2 studio affordable units, but they may invite 4 or more households to come forward from the waiting list to complete their lease screening. And this is typical of most management companies, and it's done because the process of leasing units is often slowed down by households who don't qualify. So they want to speed up that process for everyone by inviting more people forward than just the number of units that they have available. So for this reason, if you're the first household on the waiting list, you don't want to immediately inform your current landlord that you're giving notice and moving into a unit at Radio Factory. And that's because you haven't yet been approved by the management company. Once you are approved, you can go ahead and do that once you've established your move-in date and all of that. So once you are approved, this is really the point in the process where having a position near the top of the wait list is particularly beneficial. If you're the top household on the list, you have the first chance to reserve an affordable unit. So if you have the top position on the 1-bedroom waiting list, you will have first choice in reserving an affordable 1-bedroom unit. And this is true even if another applicant who is positioned behind you on the waiting list happens to complete their lease eligibility with the management office before you do. You'd still be able to have first choice there because you're first in line. You'll be able to tour the unit and make your decision based off of whatever factors are important to you, such as the location of the unit within the building or when it will be available for occupancy. The second household on the waiting list would have second choice of the remaining units and so on. So once you've reserved an affordable unit, the leasing office is then going to notify us at SEB Housing, and we will then contact you in order to coordinate the submission of the supporting income, asset, and tax documentation that will then be required for us to complete your final program eligibility review. And so hopefully by that point, you will have been able to review the documentation requirements guide that was sent along with your lottery number, and you've started to gather some of those documents. So it's not a mad rush at the end to get all of that together. You'll have about 10 days from the date of your unit reservation to submit all of that supporting documentation to us for review. And eligible households, once SEB has found you eligible, after we've reviewed all of your income documentation, you'll be able to sign leases and establish a move-in date with the leasing office. Our program certifications are good for 6 months. If for any reason you move into one of these units 6 or more months after submitting your application, there's a chance that you would need to submit updated income documentation to us. This probably will not be the case for your application at Radio Factory because the units are expected to be available fairly soon. I just wanted to put that out there, even though you probably won't need to worry about it. And so once you're leased, you are done with all lease screenings until the lease renewal date. And we hope that you love the unit, you don't want to move out after that first year, but and if you do want to stay, you would need to recertify your income with either SEB or the management office prior to your lease renewal. And that's to confirm that you're still eligible for this affordable unit. Your income can have increased though. So if your income has increased and is now above the 80% of AMI, that's fine. Households will remain eligible for the affordable housing unit as long as your household income doesn't exceed 140% of AMI. So the last page of or not the very last, but towards the end of the information packet, it does list the 140% figures for the different household sizes. But to give you an example, if you're a household of 2, you would have qualified for the lottery with an income at or below $89,500, but you would be able to make up to $125,300 at the time of your recertification 1 year later in order to remain eligible for that affordable apartment. So it's good that you wouldn't need to keep your income at the same level to be able to stay in your home. I think that about covers what I wanted to get to tonight on the that's from the information packet. I'm going to open it up now if there's any questions. I'm going to reply to the chat question as well.
You did say that the due date for the application is 8/16, right? And it has to be postmarked that day?
Postmarked or received by the due date. I'm going to confirm right now just so it's actually on here.
I thought I
Yeah,
could
it's the
have
16th.
on the link, it said August 2nd. So I just want to confirm that 8/16 is right.
8/16 is correct. Oops, sorry. Yeah, is that on the website that you saw it to?
Yeah, somebody had sent me a link for this Zoom for the law basically, and it said within there, it just said it gave me the criteria for what my income could the cap where my income could be, and it said that the app had to be in by August 2nd.
Yeah, no, it's the 16th for Radio Factory. I'm hoping that's just not maybe a link for a different property that we're working with.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that.
Yep. 16th. It can be postmarked or received by that date, and it could still be considered.
Hi, I also heard the second as well, or
Okay.
not heard, but I saw it somewhere.
Okay. Do you know if it was the website or someone sent you something from SEB?
No, I think it was the website. I always go to the website.
Okay. I'll double check that after this. I'll be going on the website to post this link to the recorded session anyway. So thank you both for letting me know that.
You're welcome.
Sure. The units, there's laundry on the facilities, right?
There has to be. I don't have, I'm looking in our materials here. I don't have that info on there. There's either a,
Like, are they in unit or are they
Yeah.
like laundry area?
I don't know for sure. I'm going to assume they're not in unit just because I think I would have that information. If they
Yeah.
were, there has to be an area, probably within several areas in the building, but I'm writing that down to get that information for you. If you want to, if that's a deciding factor for you and you want me to get back to you, why don't you send me a direct message now with your email if you'd like.
Okay,
I can get back to you on that.
all right,
Check with the
Thank
property management first. Sure.
thanks.
Just replying to this direct message now, but if you have any other questions, I'm here. Stay on for a couple minutes.
Have more than 20 people applied?
I don't want that to discourage you from applying, but I will look it up for you.
Thank you.
Hold on one second. I believe so. I'm gonna pull it up. Yeah, we've had a decent amount of interest in this one, which is great.
I think the reason why there's a lot of people who are interested is that this rent is actually within a voucher limit, like.
That's the goal. Good.
Yeah, but most of your listings, they are not.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we would love all of them to be. I think everybody should be able to apply, obviously. But some of the the rents in the area obviously are
With
quite
inflation,
high, so.
yeah, I mean, you can't control the inflation, yeah.
Yep. So 31 people so far have completed applications. Yeah. But that's not to say how many are qualified for 2 bedrooms versus and nobody on this list has been least qualified. So the management company would still need to least qualify them.
Sorry, and so I listened to everything you said. I just want to clarify. So there's no first come, first serve. Like if we're to hang up right now and one of us gets to the application process first, do you know what I mean? Like it's not like
that doesn't matter. Yeah.
No, okay, that's all I want.
Yeah.
I know.
No, it doesn't matter at all. If the first person maybe submitted their application, the day that this was posted online, and then someone gets it in on the last day of, on August 16th, they're going to have the same,
Okay.
same status on the wait list, obviously depending on priorities and things like that.
Right. Okay. Got you. Thank you.
Anything else? Just replying to one more direct message here.
Sorry, I missed the beginning. Did you say there was 18 units total?
Flip back there for you. 19 units. There are 2 studios, 10 1-bedrooms, and 7 2-bedrooms.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anything else?
So when you said that there's no limit to your assets, that will not like say like in checking or savings, that won't come into play when they're just looking at what I'm making per year, not so much what's in my checking and savings account. They just basically want pay stubs and any other sort of income such as child support or alimony. They're not going to take into consideration what's in my checking or savings account.
Right. The amounts don't matter. It's just, we may look at, you may supply all of your information and we have questions for you. So you kind of have to go back and forth a couple times with SEB. That's completely normal.
Yeah.
And the reason for it is because obviously there's a lot of information that's necessary, but also you might submit a bank statement, it has a deposit or something that we have to further verify. But yeah, I mean, any income generated from assets will be counted as income, but other than that, we're not looking for the total amount of assets that you have available to you or anything like that.
All right, thank you.
All right, anything else?
Nope. You just said that it's going to be held on the 24th, right? And we'll get an email at whether or not we're picked. Will we know if we weren't eligible? We'll be told that. And
yeah, before the lottery date is when you'll get that email that has all of the information that I mentioned in terms of which bedroom type you qualify for, whether or not your local preference, and what your lottery number is, so you know what to listen for on the lottery night. Yep. So the applications are due on the 16th. You should hear from us by early the following week, at least several days before the lottery.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And maybe well before that, if you get your application in earlier, you would know, within a week or so whether or not you're eligible.
Okie dokie. Thank
you. Sure. Anybody else before I close it up?
Thank you.
I'm good.
One last question.
Thanks for joining. Sure.
Sorry, I have one last question, right?
Mm-hmm.
You work for SCB Housing, right?
Right.
So in your experience, like when they pick the lottery names, do a lot of people get disqualified? Is that common?
I mean, I'm not involved in the process in terms of what percentage of people are no longer eligible following a lottery. We have a team that is gathering your income documentations and going through all of it. So I can't say for sure, but no, I mean, I wouldn't say so. If you make it into the lottery, we've already done a preliminary check on your income. You're self-reporting that you make, $50,000 per year. We know that you're under the income limits and hopefully above those minimum income limits. And you just have to then confirm all of that in writing by submitting, the documentation that's required later on. So no, I wouldn't say it's definitely not the majority of people, no.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. What if
Sure.
you, like, for instance, I don't make it on this lottery. I was eligible, but I just didn't make it because there was lots of people that were eligible and there wasn't enough units. And, they put me on the wait list and everything. But now I want to apply to a different lottery for a different property. Will my process be easier because I've already kind of started the process with a different lottery?
So
I mean,
it'd be easier for
within
you
the
because
6
you-
months.
Yeah, so so you still have to submit everything, but it'll be easier for you because you already know what to expect and you'll have all of that documentation potentially in a folder at your house or whatever. But we will still need to, get updated pay stubs from you and stuff like that, because they would need to be the most recent ones. And your benefit statement, if you have one, would need to be updated. Your taxes, if you're applying for another lottery right after this one, your taxes are still going to be from 2021. So yeah, I mean, some of these things will be easy for you, but you will still need to get the most recent bank statements, pay stubs, stuff like that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep, and you can, I should put it out there, if you want to apply for multiple lotteries that you see, that it has no bearing on where you'll place on this one. You can apply to as many as you'd like.
Okay.
Do we know the credit minimum, or is that something the building knows at the time of leasing?
Yeah, I don't know that. That is something that we're not involved in that process, but the leasing office has I should say too, that their credit minimum will not be different for market rate households and affordable households. Their criteria should be exactly the same across the board for all households, regardless of whether or not you're applying for affordable or market rate.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yep. Anything else? All right, so go ahead to our website. If you have any questions that come up after this session, you can email us at info@scbhousing.com. And I have one email address here that I'm going to follow up on. And yeah, if you have any questions after the fact, like I said, just email us, and we look forward to getting your application. Have a great night.
You
Thanks.
too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.